Hello, this is Tina Catola and Sarah Kotz, and we are here talking about the 3 stages of Sun in Capricorn. And one of the things I was thinking about before this call was with our lessons. We've talked before about how the signs, every sign has an element and a mode, and the element of Capricorn is Earth, and the mode of Capricorn is Cardinal, and Cardinal means goal-oriented. So Capricorn is a goal-oriented Earth sign. And the coffee table astrology books talk about how that means Capricorns are all very ambitious and, they wear their business suits, they're carrying their briefcase, and this is the image of Capricorn. But when we really understand astrology correctly, we understand the sun is the soul. So the soul, or the spiritual level of being and the spiritual level of consciousness, is applying itself to a goal-oriented earth plane. So from a soul level, that takes a completely different form. So you have some Capricorns that are going to be conservative and are wearing business suits and are carrying briefcases, but often they're even doing that for a different reason than most people that are doing that, because again, it's operating from a soul level. So if we look at goal-oriented earth plane from the soul level, we are trying to do something constructive for the earth plane, and there's a definite sense of moving towards a specific goal. That's the sole purpose of Capricorn, really. And what Capricorn has as a result is they have what I call a natural form of X-ray vision, because they are spiritually perceiving the material plane. And so they understand the underlying structure of this world, of society, of any forms in nature or in mankind or in politics that they put their attention towards. So before Capricorn starts their journey into first stage, they are looking at the world and they're looking at society, and they want to make a concrete positive change in the world around them. And so to do that, their idea is to get into a position where they can change the rules. So to get into the position where you can change the rules, you have to be in a position of power. There are 2 ways to get into a position of power on the earth plane. One way is to be born into a high level, into a society where there's hereditary rulers, or to be born into a tremendous degree of wealth and capacity to influence the political situation. And the other way to get into a position of power is to work your way towards it. So these are 2 very specific types of first stage Capricorn. And they operate quite differently. Because if the Capricorn person is coming into a very simple background or a very simple arena where they don't have a whole lot of wealth and power and they don't have a lot of influence and they have to work their way towards that, they gain the capacity to be really practical and methodical and disciplined and keep on moving and going forward no matter what. So they get strength and determination. But because there is a spiritual purpose for doing what they're doing, they're not just trying to get into a high position just so they can feel good about themselves and they can get all the goodies and all the perks. They're trying to do it for an altruistic reason. Working their way towards that goal, it gives them certain strengths, but it also risks them losing touch with their spiritual vision. So a type of Capricorn that works their way there, they've got the strength and they get to a position where they can make changes, but they may have lost a little bit of their spiritual understanding. The other type of first stage Capricorn that's born into a position of wealth and power is not going to lose their spiritual vision. They've got when they're not making the changes, when they're not trying to actively affect things in the world, they have a lot of leisure time. They haven't had to struggle or work to get to where they are. So they're able to keep a spiritual understanding. They're able to keep on dreaming and to keep having a creative approach and a creative attitude. But they have not learned the discipline and the practicality, and they don't have an understanding of the common people because they've never been one. They may have a love for the common people and a desire to change things on their behalf, but they may not really clearly understand everything that's needed. Now, because we spend several lifetimes in first stage of any sign, every Capricorn is going to spend a few lifetimes getting into that position of power, and some individuals choose both of these ways to get there. And that's probably maybe the best way to do it because you get a well-rounded background, but each individual has a different path they've taken. So some Capricorns took the really completely practical path every single time. Some Capricorns were born into it every single time. And so they will get there's a different spectrum of strengths and weaknesses that people have that they can carry through into lots of future lifetimes, depending on how they got to the position that they are in. Now, while you're getting to that position, it's kind of challenging because you have a lot of competition. And even if you're born into that position, you have a lot of jealousy directed your way. Most people want to be in a position at the top of the heap for their own selfish reasons. So Capricorns experience a lot of trouble with corruption and with people who oppose their basic values and who try to get in their way and who try to destroy them. It's a competitive arena, and they can suffer for that. Some Capricorns in the later stages even just innately have trouble trusting men, because their subconscious memory is that most of the time, the people who were trying to kill them or get in their way or be their enemies were men. Most societies, not all, it's the men that are in these positions of power or that are striving to get into these positions of power. But certainly Capricorns can have a fear of being betrayed or stabbed in the back because they have experienced a lot of that kind of thing, or certainly the threat of it. The other thing that happens is that when they are in these positions and they change the rules, they literally go in and they change the structure of society in some way, it's very satisfying. But when the lifetime is over and they're no longer there to monitor it all, they observe that it just gravitates right back into the same old corruption. So there's, after several lifetimes of going in there and putting your heart and soul into this, whether you worked your way there or you were monitoring it from your childhood in the palace, it becomes very, it's very disappointing. There's this feeling, so disappointing, it's so hard to So there's a real sense of, well, what's the point? You know, what do I do? And when the person really becomes disillusioned and or gives up or gains tremendous resentment about the corruption in the world, that's when they enter into second stage. Now, generally, it's interesting for Capricorn, a lot of times they'll actually enter in between lifetimes, because it's after seeing the results after they left that again and again, that there's a disappointment that occurs. Not always. Sometimes they will start to get disillusioned even when they're in that powerful position, because they can see nobody's really paying any attention. I might have changed the rules, but nothing really has ultimately changed. So once a person is in second stage Capricorn, what's happening is they then again, they have these two different paths they can take. So some will say, well, I really enjoyed being up there and having all the goodies. And if I can't make any changes, well, why bother? You know, maybe I just better stop fighting them and just join them and wallow in the goodies. I know how to get them. I know how to be in those high places. I know how to make lots of money. I know how to get all kinds of pleasures. They're frustrated with themselves underneath that, and they don't like themselves underneath that because they really wanted to change things. But they say, you know, what the heck, I'll just be corrupt like everybody else. So then they have the ultimate, the ongoing self-hatred, the loss of your spiritual knowledge completely, the experience of that too many pleasures are bad for your body, so you eventually end up in rotten shape. And so that's not really a very fun place to be. Other types of Capricorns, they don't lose their ideals, but they lose hope that their ideals can really be accomplished, or that they can be accomplished by going in there and becoming politically involved on a conventional level. So this is more the second stage Capricorn that I call the Robin Hood type of second stage Capricorn, because they maintain their values and they speak about what's wrong with society. They're really angry about it, but they won't get involved. They're not going to participate in what's going on. Some people might be people who are rebelling or, you know, acting in an underhanded way. I bet you there's some incredible computer hackers out there that are late second stage Capricorns that fight the powers and hate the powers, and it's all a piece of crap anyway. So I'm just going to cause as much crap as I can because the world deserves it. But Robin Hood, you know, he robbed from the rich and he gave to the poor. And there certainly are certain types of second stage Capricorns that, because they really couldn't make any lasting changes or any lasting difference to what was going on for the good of the people, they are helping lots of people on a one-on-one basis. And this means that they feel that they never really quite do enough. So they do have low self-esteem and they see themselves as expendable. and they let people walk on them and step on them, and they just keep giving and helping them, because no matter how much they give within their inner being, they just feel like it's just not enough. And the other thing is that Capricorn wants to be in the thick of things. Even if they're not in there, they resent that they are no longer in that position anymore. They want to be effective. They want to be active. And so again, there's this element of frustration. So even if they're staying away from those higher positions, they still wish they somehow could be in there, but they think it's just impossible. There's too much corruption. There's just all too much a mess. And it starts to become a real dead end. If you're either the Robin Hood type of hedonistic second stage Capricorn, or the fat cat rolling in all the corruptions of society type of second stage Capricorn, you reach a dead end. And even the very altruistic second stage Capricorns, they just burn themselves out, because they just literally give themselves away until they're just about dead. Mm-hmm. So everybody reaches, one way or another, whatever response to second stage Capricorn they choose after several lifetimes of being on one side of the fence or the other, of I'm keeping my ideals, but I'm not part of things, or I'm part of things and I'm jettisoning my ideals. They come to a dead end, and there's too much pain. That's always what happens with every sign. At the end of second stage Capricorn, there is too much pain. Things are breaking down. Health breakdowns are not an uncommon experience for a lot of people at the end of second stage. Not everybody, but a certain percentage in every sign, that's going to be a symptom that they're at the end of the rope of second stage. So everybody starts looking for the truth. They just start looking for answers. And in third stage, oh, a kitty. Say something, Sarah, so they can see the kitty. Oh.
He wants to be on camera right now.
Yeah. Yes, that's a Manx?
He's a little monkey. He's just not supposed to be on the table, so he came up from behind to try and keep him off.
Yes. Okay, so we had a little break for the little kitty. Who wanted to say something about third stage Capricorn, but unfortunately we don't speak cat, so we don't know what he was going to say.
I don't know what happened there. It's the blooper.
The blooper. So for every sign, there's a riddle that needs to be solved in third stage. And what happens for Capricorn, it's almost as though the focus has been too much on the material plane and on the materialistic side of things. You cannot legislate a change in human society. The only real change that ever occurs is a change of consciousness. And this is what third stage Capricorn people, as they're really searching for answers, they finally get that spiritual vision back. And they start to understand that it's their capacity to perceive the truth and their capacity to perceive what is needed that has the power to really transform the world, because it transforms the world one person at a time. But as soon as a person's perceptions and state of consciousness and understanding has changed, the change is permanent. Mm-hmm. Because if we change the laws, now the automatic thing is it's just going to gravitate back to what it was. So once the third stage Capricorn has their spiritual vision back, and it's a battle to get it back, because again, there is this sort of automatic wiring towards this realistic, practical, physical world, which of course is a spiritual world in and of itself. As people who started to understand quantum physics, our understanding now, everything is made of solidified light particles, everything is spiritual. And there is a spiritual structure to all of existence. And third stage and third stage Capricorn people can really directly perceive that. And so as a person moves towards the third stage, they start to have this capacity to understand the underlying way in which everything works and the underlying way in which things are wired. So they're making changes and sharing their perception in ways that are transformative, healing, beneficial, constructive in the world. And that can take lots of different forms. Younger souls in third stage Capricorn are not necessarily out there making massive changes in the world as a whole, but they can really perceive how things are structured in an almost magical way that appears to be a form of genius to anybody else, and I suppose it really is. Most people can't automatically comprehend how something works. They can't go into say, for instance, a corporation, or pick up computer science so rapidly. They understand how this all operates and how to change it from within. A third stage Capricorn can make an incredible doctor, because they can understand the body from the inside out, and they can understand the individual's needs in terms of their individual physical constitution from the inside out. A third stage Capricorn can make an incredible therapist, because once again, they've got this ability to see the interior structure of each individual's true nature. Mm-hmm. And a lot of third stage Capricorns certainly can give philosophical, political knowledge and wisdom to the masses. My old best friend was a third stage Capricorn, and I went through watching her go through the transition and make it into third stage. And she lectured, because she was half Cherokee, and she lectured about the First Nations teachings, and about just general spiritual teachings that applied to all people, and that particularly applied to people of mixed racial heritage, because that is the wave of the future. And she would speak to vast audiences, and she used to say, well, I'm just telling them 2% of what I know, and they're all blown away. And eventually, I'm sure she'll come back in, because she's no longer in the physical plane, but she'll come back in when the world's ready for the rest of it, and continue to share it, because that's what happens. We stay the same stage for several lifetimes. So when a person goes into third stage in this lifetime, they will continue there with that, reaping that harvest for a very long time. Now, one other thing that will happen with the 3 stages is that there is also what I call a crossroads, which is at the end of the first stage of any sign. We have an opportunity to go straight to the third stage. We don't have to go through second stage, because second stage is difficult and it's painful. It does deepen us, and that's one of the values of going through second stage. It gives us a deeper sense of feeling and compassion, and just a deeper understanding of the complexities of life. But, it's really kind of a pain in the butt to go through for 3 or 4 lifetimes. So there's always the opportunity to bypass that when we get to the end of first stage. So if someone is in political positions of power, or, very highly responsible roles with a lot of money and a lot of power, and they've been really out there making changes and trying to change the world, and they keep banging their head against all kinds of corruptions. I actually think our current prime minister is at this stage, right at the end of first stage Capricorn. Yeah, that's my sense. When he came in, I'm like, oh, he's a first stage Capricorn.
Yeah, interesting.
It is interesting. And so, you just realize this is never going to change. Now, are you going to just roll over and be part of the corruption? Are you going to get so completely disillusioned that you abdicate your participation in the greater world? Or are you going to start looking for higher understanding, looking for higher answers? If you start to look for a higher level of perception, then a person can move from the first stage to the third stage of Capricorn. So it's about not letting the disillusionment overwhelm you. And it's about understanding that maybe there's a completely different level of consciousness to look at this whole situation from. Because then that person, a person who makes that third stage transition is already usually in some kind of public venue, so that if they reach a deeper level of understanding that can transform people, when literally when individuals just hear them speak, they've already got a tremendous venue for that vision. So it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, that's incredible.
Yeah. So I'm just trying to see if there's any other. This, to me, as I was talking about second, third stage Capricorn, it sounded a little more simple than some of the other signs, but it certainly takes about as long to go through it as every other sign. And again, because the person has some of them, especially if they were Capricorns who worked their way to positions of power in other lifetimes, they've tended to be so practically minded that they have this innate skepticism that goes along with it, and it's very, very hard for them to just completely surrender to spiritual awareness and spiritual knowledge. And if they had the escapist tendency, there's an escapist tendency that goes along with the type of first stage Capricorn who's born into situations where they have automatic access to a position of power. If they have the escapist tendency, then they can get into fantasy-oriented versions of spiritual ideals without accessing the core of the knowledge. So those are two of the stumbling blocks. Capricorn in second, third stage has a certain stumbling block towards having pure spiritual perception. But as soon as they cross that stumbling block, then they have a tremendous clarity, tremendous clarity. That's really because they're terribly allergic to any kind of dogma or corruption. They will not allow it to enter into their spiritual understanding when they're going into third stage, which is really nice. I mean, other signs can sometimes have a little bit of that added into the mix because it's not as important as far as their soul journey. So Capricorns have a kind of purity. And I don't know if there's anything else to add to that. Any questions on that, Sarah? In case.
No, I don't think so. Like, what do you think the biggest thing, like, you would recommend for Capricorn moving from second to third? Like, what's the main lesson? What's the biggest piece that, like, how you would sum this up?
I would sum it up as to understand that the perception of truth has a lot more power than you had thought it had, and to really trust in that part of yourself, trust in that part of reality to unveil itself to you, and know that this will give a much more powerful contribution to the world than practically anything else you could do.
That's nice.
Yeah. So I think that's the story of the 3 stages of Capricorn.